Hey everybody, welcome back to Midwest Marksman. My name is Andrew, and what you're looking at here is a CVA Cascade. That's the long-range hunter in 7 PRC with an anechoic 30 caliber can on there. The optic is a Telson optic, which they did send out to the channel. It's a 2.5 to 15 by 44 millimeter second focal plane optic. It does have lift to operate turrets for windage and elevation. It's a 30 millimeter tube. It has side parallax and side illumination that gets very, very bright. I like the milliradian reticle and milliradian turrets. They do match up nicely. This is going to be a review of both their tripod as well as this optic, which I think pair really well together, especially with this combination on the CVA Long Range Hunter. Stick around for this review. I'm going to review both those items. I'll come back at the end and talk about some other options from Telson that might be also compelling to you. But in the meantime, I'm going to try to take this from about 110 yards out to 330 yards and show you some of my results.
All right, let's talk about the target. So I started here, went up here, made an adjustment and did a pair, and then I moved from the bench over to prone. And this is pretty indicative for me, where I go from the bench to the prone. I have more mass behind me and it does pull a little bit low right, fairly often, at least low. And I'm going to have to make an adjustment here. I'll move that over to center, up a tenth, and over it looks like about 3/10 at least. It's about a 1-inch group with that Federal Ascent. The Hornady 180 grain, the ELDMs, whatever those are, those seem to print out of that rifle a lot tighter. It is a very a very lightweight rifle with a lightweight can, and now a lightweight optic. So the whole thing is easy to carry around. If I can keep at least the inch and move that over, it's fine for a hunting rifle for me. Maybe not a precision rifle, but a hunting rifle, I can be okay with that. I'm just going to move it over, make that adjustment, and let's run out a few hundred yards further.
Okay, before I go any further, a couple important things you should know about this optic. Now, first of all, it is loose. My scope base is loose. Oh, that explains a lot. That explains a lot. I was fighting my group there for a second. My scope base is loose. That happens every once in a while. I shoot hot, cold, hot, cold, hot, cold, and things loosen up when you go back and forth, even with blue Loctite and proper torque specs. Well, anyways, a couple things you should know before I go tighten this down one more time is that it is a milliradian based scope. You can get it in MOA. It is a second focal plane. And don't let that lose you. If you're not into second focal planes, they have a first focal plane 3 to 18. It's called the Telson. It's very similar to this, just a little bit bigger, larger objective, but not much heavier. It's still a 30 millimeter tube, ultralight, awesome reticle. I really appreciate that optic, and go ahead and watch that video. I'll link it for you right here. But the 2.5 to 15 arc is a second focal plane, either milliradian or MOA. You have a side parallax. You do have really, really bright illumination up to level 11. You have windage. These are lift to operate turrets. And probably the most important thing I can reference right now would be that the stadia in your reticle are going to be true at 15 power. So typically, especially on old school scopes, it was either 10 power or full power. And on this one, it is full power. That's where the stadia is going to be true for your holdovers, for your milliradian scale there. Make sure that you're paying attention to that when you're hunting. Most of the time, it's not going to be an issue, because if you're shooting a long range shot, you're probably shooting it on 15 power anyways. This optic provides a great field of view. It's really not like looking through a tiny little tube. You know, in the old days when we were using these 1-inch ultralight hunting scopes, they were just terrible. These modern optics really provide a nice field of view, and with this size objective being a 44, it's a pretty bright image. It's pretty light. It is, you know, pretty bright out with the snow, so I maybe should wait till summer before saying much more. But in the evenings, I've still been really happy with this, and the contrast between images is really sharp. Like, there's a good sharpness there, good clarity all the way through, and then being able to run that illumination very, very low or very, very high when the sun is out to contrast against the snow. I've been impressed with it, so I think it's going to be a great hunting optic. But now I need to take a little bit and tighten this down one more time and try to finish out the review. All right, now with the Telson BH55, I've got that head on the Telson 3632. It's a really great tripod, but where I'm at right now, I've got a snowbank that I'm sitting on top of. It just presents the tripod a little bit taller than I usually need. And it's still quite cold out, so I want to sit off the snow and all this. I'm sitting on a mat. One thing you can do that's just a commonly known but not often implemented hack would be to actually bend one leg, and I'm going to bend the leg nearest to me on the left, like that. You can see it did bring the height down. Now we're all canted, but you have an adjustable ball head. And I can level this out right there like that, and it's a good sturdy tripod. So this would be difficult to do with a lower quality tripod at all. You would just really struggle to make this work well. But with a higher quality, more rigid tripod, these inverted leg styles are they're top-notch stuff. It's actually pretty easy for me to get a height that works. So you can see right there, I still have pan adjustment. I can still work with it. It's just going to set it off axis a little bit. And so if you mobilize the head, you can still track stuff and follow it around. But if you just need to take a static shot and you need to do like what I'm doing today, I'm taking some shots at 330 yards from right where I'm at, it's easier for me to do it this way. Just cant it a little bit, make sure that the head is level, make sure that my scope is level, and I'll run it from there and be pretty comfortable. The only thing I have to do is scooch back a touch, and I'm going to use a little bit of a rear support bag in the back. And actually, I think I'm going to be pretty comfortable right here. A few complicating factors today. Like normal, it's just really cold. And then somehow with the sunlight, it's not warming us up at all, and I'm just getting a lot of glare off the snow. So what I'm going to do is try to wear some sunglasses while I'm shooting. I still get a great image on the scope. I'm so thankful that it has really decent eye relief. If it didn't have decent eye relief, I would struggle a little bit more in the current setup that I have it on. It's just a little bit more finicky. Shooting it off the tripod is something that I'm working on because this guy does have some reasonable recoil associated with it. 7 PRC in general does have a little snappiness, and you put it in a lightweight rifle and it just exemplifies that attribute. So what I'm going to try to do is dial up 1.2, which is actually for my Hornady load. I don't think the Federal will be terribly far off. I'll throw some on the big steel silhouette. We'll kind of see where it is and if I'm consistent or not. If it's consistent, then maybe I'll move over to some smaller targets. It's amazing what you can do when the scope rings are tightened down as well. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I'm really working for it with this review, whether it's been, the weather or the cartridges or the fact that my scope base came loose, then my scope rings actually came loose and I had to tighten those down in between takes here. So I was hitting left for some reason. It just did not make sense whatsoever. Like, I've got plenty of experience with the rifle, with shooting off tripods. I could not figure it out. And then I was like, I wonder if, and they had loosened up. So magnums and shooting in hot, cold conditions back and forth, they can be a lot of work, to be honest with you, but it's such a reward when you get it locked down. And now I'm going through, I feel like amateur hour right now. I haven't had problems like this in years. But anyways, it's kind of fun. I'm enjoying it because I love shooting off tripods. If you don't have a tripod yet, I'm going to highly suggest that you check out the Telson tripod and get the head with it here. This is a really high quality setup. I love that there is a clip underneath so that I can hang bags and keep stuff out of the snow. And pairing the 2.5 with a rifle and a tripod like this makes so much sense. The fact that I can shoot it articulated in different positions comfortably. It's got these really big feet, and it's just stable. it takes some of the vibration out of it. I'm pretty sure that carbon fiber has taken a little bit of that wiggle out of there, and it feels fairly stable. I'll try to move on to a little bit smaller target. I still jump around with this rifle a good bit. It's not like shooting a 6.5, guys. It's got a lot more to it. So I'll try to go to a smaller target, and we'll just see what I can do with that. I am so happy with that. I'm just so pleased with this, guys. Great image. Being able to stay in the glass off the tripod is really nice. Shout out one more time to Anechoic. One of my favorite 30 caliber cans that has ever been made is that one right there. It suppresses really well. The flow through can or end cap works really well on gas guns, and on my bolties, it's very lightweight. It doesn't seem to shift my point of impact. And man, does this thing have some authority downrange. Getting a little bit settled and steady here. It looks like I can at least make a kill shot for an elk. We can probably all agree that's a kill shot for an elk at 330 off the tripod here. And I'm using this on 15 power. No, you don't need more power. I think a pretty competent shooter with good data will do the same thing at 600 yards. I would need some practice, but a lot of shooters could do that at 600 yards who actually have some practice with that. I'm so used to precision rifles, but shooting this guy, this lightweight setup that is easy to haul around, and it's still pretty lethal, 330 yards it looks like, that is very pleasing. This is also one of the most expensive reviews I've shot in a long time. This stuff is not cheap. Well, how about that? 3 for 3. That will really give you some confidence. I highly suggest, if you have not got a tripod yet, get this tripod. Go out to the range, not crazy far, but maybe like 300, 200 yards, and do some prone or some sitting practice like this or kneeling practice. Man, can it build your confidence, and after you get more comfortable with it, I just think it's so practical, especially for hunting. Let's talk about some of these features. First of all, something I can really appreciate is you do have a double cutout for your ball head, which it's helpful for things like storage, but also articulation of angles. But storage is one thing that will matter. This does come with a bag that I'm not going to show you right now, but it comes with a bag that has an expansion bit in it. It will fit the tripod with the ball head installed. But if you needed to, just for extra space, you can store it this way. Or if you needed to get a downward angle in filming something, there's just a lot of different ways that this actually would make sense. As you can tell, this is Picatinny and Arca adjustable. That is phenomenal. At this price point, I can't believe it has as many features as it does, to be honest with you. These ball heads are not cheap to manufacture, and this is a high quality one. You do have a fast throw lever, so this is going to work well for competition, but it seems pretty secure to me, and it is adjustable. You do have a nut inside that you can tension if you need to get that Picatinny. That's usually where I find it, is Picatinny needs a touch of adjustment with some kinds of rifles, although this self-adjusts pretty well for everything I've done so far on the channel. Like I said, you have your controls on this side, and this side, this is your large control, and it's a nice dial because it actually has a little bit of a flange and flare to it with some scallops cut into the side. I'm really happy to see these scallops there in the cold or when it's wet like right now. I'm able to grab onto that and everything moves and articulates the way it should. All right, just to give some perspective on this tripod, I am 6'5". I'm not a small guy, and this definitely gets taller than I would need unless I was shooting up at an angle. If I was doing some high angle shooting, it definitely could be a thing, or if I have really low ground in front of me and the only option is to present the tripod, in this standard configuration forward on the low ground, shooting down, that definitely could change some things. So it gets very, very tall. I think it gets taller than most people will ever need, which is a good thing. Like I said, it's an inverted leg. So you have your 3 legs, 1 twist, and the whole leg is going to collapse up to the top. Nice big rubber pads on there. It's a 36-32 for dimensions. If you're curious about that, you do have a bubble level on top. You do have a metered wheel for your pan, so you can kind of tell where you're at. And you have double or triple lock features here for pan and then adjustment of your ball head itself. But really tall, you do have multiple angles. And maybe before I get to that, there is a hook underneath. It comes, the ball head itself, if you get that, it comes with this bag, which is super useful for me. It's got a nice leather stitched bottom to it and kind of like a microfiber padded piece. I store sometimes camera equipment in here, or like today, my brass. I'll actually use it as a brass bag and hang it there. Just really nice extra that you can actually use. It's not a throwaway bag. It's actually something that I would take with me if I was on a hunt or at a match. I can use this. So it's really nice to see some utility there. Okay, now moving on to those legs. You do have these kind of improved spring mechanisms with a little bit of a hinge, and there's a post built into it. That post allows you to get a really good purchase on it, as opposed to somewhere you have to kind of pull them out. This one, I can actually just press it down. It is spring. It has a spring return to it, spring operated. And each one of them floats really smoothly. The tension was preset from the factory really well. Not that I would ever need to shoot in this position right here. This is going to give me more flex than I want with pretty much any bipod or tripod made. I usually would just collapse it down a little bit more. But depending on what you need to do, especially if you're going to use it for camera angles, spotters, a rangefinder, any of that stuff, it seems like you can make this work. Speaking of, one of the more important positions for me would actually be kneeling, getting over grass and weeds and snowbanks. I'm going to show you that in a second. Minnesota can't decide if it wants to be sub-zero or rain in like the same few hours. It's terrible. Okay, I'm going to use my DSI with the Telson 3-18 on top because this is something I actually tripod shoot a little more often than some other guns. Even with gun in hand, I can make this work. Keep everything dry and off the ground as much as possible. Tripod shooting with a gun like this and getting into a kneeling position is so easy. I'm going to open up that pan so that I can actually track. And if I need to articulate the head, I can loosen up my 2 mechanisms there. Whoops. Loosen. I can loosen it up. I can track really well now. And from the kneeled position right here, I can address things that are very low, very high. I can track with things. I can tighten up the ball head and track with things if I need to, or pan back and forth really easily. It's really sturdy. Typically kneeling, I would actually prefer to go down a little lower. The problem is sometimes I just can't. There's brush and foliage and dirt and snowbanks. Sometimes I'm actually forced to shoot in this position this high right here. But because it's a sturdy tripod, I can get behind it. This is a really low weight AR in general. So getting behind it like this is still pretty comfortable. One thing I could improve probably in the future is just the distance of my ARCA plate. It's a little bit far for when I reach up to grab the tripod. Sort of. I've got pretty long arms. But anyways, I just wanted to show you guys that actually kneeling, this guy makes a lot of sense and it does really, really well in its standard configuration. So right now, how it's set up, that's just how you would automatically deploy it to its first leg angle position and its standard height. Anything from there would take a little bit more time, but this is pretty natural for me. And if you were a little shorter than me, I actually think you still can make it work. It's just really good for me as a guy who's 6'5". Something else very helpful is you do have a bubble level built into it. There's a clear coloration bubble level. at the top of your head. So if you're facing things this way, you can tell if you're actually level up here. There's also a bubble level built into the tripod. If I can move this around, right up here, you also have a bubble level on top. You can see that this is the quick release for the plate, the mounting plate here. If you wanted to go to an underneath bowl style with a control that way, it does come with an adapter, but I'm going to advocate for this because I think this is the best way to run one of these, is just with this head right here. I like it the most. One more time, this is what I'm talking about with the spring return on this barrel right here. There's kind of a little post with grips on it. It's got texture, and when I grab that, there is a spring that will return it wherever I go. And you have multiple options for angles. They're all the standard angles you would expect to see, but it's just nice that it returns back to home. If you desired to throw on some accessories, you can throw in an accessory in here or an adapter to get down to 1/4 inch. This is secured in really well. It must be some sort of epoxy or something inside of this, so I don't think this is going to back out too easily on its own. Underneath, you do have that hook, which is essential for getting gear like a backpack secured on here, weighing it down in a good central spot. That's one of the ways I keep things dry in the winter. All right, real briefly, it is sundown like in 1 minute. It'll be sundown, and I'm going to tell you, between these two, going back and forth, the 3-18 does have a clearly brighter image. I feel like I can see sharpness better. The colors look a little better to me too. That's not to say that the 2.5 to 15 is somehow inferior glass or worse. It doesn't have a 50 millimeter objective, and then it's just not bringing as much light to my eye, and that does different things. So just to summarize, the 2.5 to 44 is still very good. I could still shoot any big game animal here out to a couple hundred yards very confidently, even in the brush. I could make them out on 15 power. That's not the issue. It more gets down to like really small game. If I was shooting rabbits in the brush out there, I can see them with the 2.5 to 15. I can definitely tell they're there, but I can make out much more detail with a little bit more high-end power, and then it is just a little bit brighter of an image. So I like the Telson for that reason. But the Telson is a bigger scope. It's a more expensive scope. It is a first focal plane. It does not have lift to operate turrets. And, it's just a little bit heavier operation overall. It goes really well on this DSI. And that's one of the reasons I love it so much. But I still feel like the 2.5 to 15 is going to stay on my primary hunting rifle, because it's going to do well enough in conditions like this where it's not going to stop me from bringing meat home or putting it on the table. Really briefly, I want to take a look at this reticle because it is worth your time. It is a second focal plane reticle, which means you need to shoot it on 15 power for the subtensions to actually match up, to line up and be true. That being said, I think 6 is extremely practical. The fact that it's second focal plane means this image is going to remain the same size all the time. That also means that you can't shoot it on 4 power and this be true. So that's something that you need to judge if that's a big deal for you. For me, it's totally not a big deal. I'm not going to use holdovers on low power with a scope like this. It just doesn't make any sense. And plus, to be honest with you, when you're aiming at closer targets, varmints, that sort of thing, at close yardages, that's not as big of a deal for me. I'm still going to make my hits, and I'm not going to have to worry about holdover in the same way at all. So looking at the reticle, you can see that this is the portion that illuminates, and it gets quite bright. I had a lot of snow cover, which makes it a little hard to see and make my camera a little blurry, but it's nice and crisp. It doesn't bleed, and it's just the portion I would personally use in hunting. I think this makes a great deal of sense, and I'm glad that they didn't do the entire Stadia. They just don't need to. This is what makes the most sense in my personal opinion, especially with large game hunting. I'm looking at the actual Stadia values, and the subtension values in any reticle matter, but on this scope I think they did it really well. We're looking at the actual Stadia, or the center point, of a 0.12. Most scopes, like precision scopes, use a 0.04 or a 0.05. I think that's almost always too small. I like to see at least a 1/10, and this one gives me a 1/10 and a little more, actually. So that's great to see. A 0.1 is really, really nice for contrasting. It's quick to the eye, and it's just slightly bolder than what's around. It's quick for me to point it on low power and get it, actualized on a target so that I can contrast this against a hide, deer hide, or rabbit hide. I've kind of aimed it around multiple things in the yard as they're running through a pheasant, and it contrasts really nicely, not just at like sundown time, but actually during the day in peak sunlight. Seeing 0.3 subtension on the bar, it's nice and thick. Again, I'm very happy to see 6. I think that's about as much holdover as I would need to see in a hunting scope like this. It's nice to have it. I like the pinnacles that kind of guide my eye to the center, but remember, it's a second focal plane, so it's always the same size in the glass. You're going to see the same image. It's really easy to measure. This being a 0.4 is just a good standard width when it comes to measuring, how far did I miss when I'm at distance. I can use that and very quickly assess if it was 0.4, 0.2, and generally, if you've shot enough, your eye is going to pick up on that fast. I just wanted to take a minute to show you the subtensions here on this map and tell you I actually think this was done pretty smart. For this Darkstorm Industries, thank you to DSI and Telson for sending out the 3-18 as well as the 2.5 to 15. Inevitably, I will be asked by somebody, which one should I get? I think the main things you need to come back to is, yes, your budget. That's something that's included here. But how are you going to use it? Are you going to be shooting more towards the evening? Well, this has a larger objective. Are you worried about your turrets being dialed when they're in a bag or on a four-wheeler or jiggling around, moving, getting snagged on something? Well, these are direct dial, and this is lift to operate on the 2.5 to 15 for both the elevation and the windage. Do you need things to be ultra lightweight? Well, this is my real lightweight package right here, and this did not contribute much weight to it at all. This is a little bit heavier. But do you need maybe first focal plane because you need the reticle to match at all powers, and you're actually going to use holdovers, and that's a really big deal to you? Well, here's your first focal plane option. Here's your second focal plane option. It's really a practical thing. It shouldn't take too long to parse this out. I'm going to say generally, for me, maybe not for you, but for me, 400 yards and in, because I'm always going to be shooting on max magnification on these kind of mid-power or slightly higher magnification scopes. I'm probably just going to be really good with a 2.5 to 15. I can get enough detail, I can get enough contrast and light with a 44 millimeter objective. I can still do really good with this. And the reticle, being the same subtension size, has some advantages, not to mention the illumination is phenomenal on both of them, but this one stands out to me a little bit more for whatever reason. I like the low end power. 2.5 power matters to me, especially as a person who takes shots on deer that are less than 100 yards away, sometimes like 30 yards away. Low end power matters, field of view matters. I want to know what's out there and what's around what I'm going to shoot at, what's beyond what I'm going to shoot at. I don't want to be so zoomed in, even if I'm shooting off a stable tripod like this. So for me, I think 400 yards and in on big game, where I just need that amount of detail. I'm not shooting, basically at sundown or sunrise. I'm shooting more in the in-between hours. This is going to do just fine. Times where I feel like varminting and small game, where I might actually be shooting, a little past sundown or a little bit before sun up, and I want those stadia to be true, I will actually hold over. I'll do some plinking, and that matters a little bit more to me. I don't always shoot on 18 power on the scope. In fact, I rarely do. Very often I shoot on 10 power, and it doesn't matter on the Telson because it's a first focal plane. And so it still has all those other features, but it has direct dial turrets. You do have a revolution indicator on this. It's one feature that's a little different, but you have a 10-yard parallax on this guy. So I just want to show you, these are not the same scope. They are fairly different, and for your application, that's what's going to help you decide along with your budget. This guy is a little bit cheaper than the 3-18. In my personal opinion, this is not going to hold me back in any big game hunting, and this is going to be superior for varminting. That's how I play it out. That's what I do. But as you see it right now, I've got on a very serious rifle, and my results downrange with both these guns were phenomenal. So I don't think you can go wrong necessarily, but some are more optimized for some applications rather than others. All right, I've done that take like 6 times, and my camera's gonna die, so that's the last one I'm gonna end with. Thank you guys for watching Midwest Marksman. If you like this video and you wanna see more, I do have a review on the 3-18 Telson. I think I've got 3 videos up on that, maybe 4 videos up on that right now. And then I've also got multiple videos on the 5-25 TM, the Target Master, which is another kind of precision-oriented, long-range-oriented first focal plane optic. If you're more into the first focal plane thing or target shooting, competition shooting, go ahead and watch one of those. I'll link all these videos for you right here.